Hello everybody. So before I get into the nitty gritty of this video, I just want to let y'all know that, with my work schedule, whatnot, and if you haven't seen my posts, then basically with these videos and also for next month's Marvel May 2023 videos, I'm only going to be uploading them on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Again, because of my work schedule, I work Mondays through Thursdays, and at the end of the day, I just get way too tired out to make videos, especially late at night, because, during that time, I just want to, get ready for the next day and go to bed and all that other stuff. So for this month and next month, I'll only be posting videos on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So there you go. Anyway, so without further ado, welcome to Young Adult April 2023, and this month we're going to be taking a look at the Divergent franchise. So let's start things off with the very first Divergent novel, beginning with the plot. In post-apocalyptic Chicago, survivors are divided into 5 factions: Abnegation, the selfless; Amity, the peaceful; Candor, the honest; Dauntless, the brave; and Erudite, the intelligent. All 16-year-olds are tested to determine the faction that best suits them, but they select their own faction at the choosing ceremony. Those who do not complete initiation become factionless and live on the streets as outcasts. The main character, 16-year-old Beatrice Pryor, cannot choose before she takes the test. Her inconclusive test results, Abnegation, Dauntless, and Erudite, mark her as Divergent, and the test administrator, Tori, warns her never to tell anyone. Agonizing over her future, Beatrice decides to leave Abnegation, her blood, and to join Dauntless. Her brother Caleb chooses Erudite. The new Dauntless initiates jump onto a moving train to Dauntless headquarters and are instructed to jump onto the roof. Most make it, but one initiate falls to her death, and another is too afraid to jump. When they are later ordered to jump into the compound entrance, Beatrice jumps first. Reaching the bottom, she tells the instructor 4 that her name is Triss. 4 explains that unlike the other factions, which all accept successful initiates, only the top 10 Dauntless initiates will stay, and the rest become factionless. Triss befriends several fellow initiates like Christina, Mole, and Al, but comes into conflict with others like Peter, Drew, and Molly. In the first stage of initiation, they are trained in guns, knives, and hand-to-hand combat. Despite her lack of physical strength, Triss finishes in 6th place. A relationship emerges between Triss and 4, and Triss is pummeled by Peter in a fight. After the first stage rankings are announced, the 2nd place Peter stabs the 1st place Edward in the eye. Edward leaves to become factionless, followed by his girlfriend Mira, which allows Peter to take Edward's place as the 1st place initiate. On visiting day, Triss's mother tells Triss to stay strong but not bring too much attention to herself during training. Erudite stirs dissent against the city's Abnegation leadership and accuses its leader, Marcus, of abusing his son. The rumors are fueled by the fact that Marcus's son, as well as Triss and Caleb, have all left Abnegation, which is also alleged to be hoarding supplies. The initiates enter the 2nd stage and face hallucinations based on their deepest fears. Triss's divergent abilities give her an advantage and earn her the top rank. Peter, Drew, and Al attack Triss, threaten sexual assault, and nearly throw her to her death, but 4 intervenes. Al begs Triss's forgiveness, but she rejects him, and he later dies by suicide. The final stage gathers the initiate spheres into a simulated fear landscape to test their acquired skills. Triss and 4 grow closer, and he lets her into his own fear landscape. She discovers that he only has 4 fears, hence his nickname. In 4's final fear, Triss also learns that he is Marcus's son, Tobias, and that the claims of abuse were true. 4 uncovers Erudite's plans to use Dauntless to stage an attack on Abnegation. Triss overcomes her fear landscape, and the Dauntless initiates are injected with a tracking serum. Triss shares her feelings for Tobias and is later ranked first at the initiation ceremony. The serum transforms the Dauntless into hypnotized soldiers to attack Abnegation. Triss and Tobias' divergent abilities allow them to remain unaffected by the serum and escape to the Abnegation compound. Triss is shot and they are captured. The Erudite leader Janine Matthews, the mastermind of the attack, injects Tobias with an experimental serum that overrides his divergence. Under Janine's control, Tobias oversees the attack from the Dauntless control room. Triss is almost run in a tank but is rescued by a mother, who reveals that she is also Divergent before she is killed while she helps Triss escape. Triss is forced to kill Will, who attacks her under the influence of the simulation. She finds her Tobias' father's and explains the truth behind the attack. They find their way to Dawnless headquarters, where Triss's father sacrifices himself. Triss is attacked by the mind-controlled Tobias. Unable to kill him, Triss surrenders, which causes Tobias to break free of the serum's control. They shut down the erudite simulation and free the Dauntless. They rejoin the Initiates and board a train to the Amity sector to find the abnegation survivors. So let's take a look at the writing style of this book. Many reviewers stated that the novel's writing style offers a distinctive, terse prose that creates a fast-paced reading experience. Susan Dominus, writing in the New York Times, described the style as, quote, brisk pacing, lavish flights of imagination writing that occasionally startles with fine detail, end quote. Abby Nolan from the American Prospect noted that Divergent follows the structural style and stylistic patterns of The Hunger Games and Blood Red Road. And now let's take a look at the themes of the novel, beginning with identity. As in other children's and young adult fiction, the novel probes placement of authority and identity within the youth's relationship to parents and other social forces. The critic Antero Garcia describes the thematic similarity between the dystopian novels as an interest in the, quote, grasp of power between youth and adult authority, end quote, and compared to the novel Unwind by Neil Shusterman. In the New York Times, Susan Dominus stated that Divergent, quote, explores a more common adolescent anxiety. The painful realization that coming into one's own sometimes means leaving family behind ideologically and physically, end quote. The voice of youth advocates agreed and wrote that Divergent shows the pressure of, quote, having to choose between following in your parents' footsteps or doing something new, end quote. The critic Antero Garcia compared the thematic interest in the characters, quote, being forced into quote, forced into limiting constraints of identity and labor associated with their identity, end quote, to similar interest in forced identities and labor in the dystopian children's novels Matched by Alison Braithwaite Condy and The Maze Runner by James Dashner. And now on to social structure, and now on to the theme of social structure and knowledge. The government division of a population to fragmented communities is a frequent device in young adult and children's fiction. YA classics such as Lois Laurie's The Giver, Monica Hughes' Dreamcatcher, and Zelpha Snyder's Green Sky trilogy use that device to different ends. In her master's thesis, Ashley Ain Haynes describes fractioning of societies in Divergent as a supporting comparison with Hunger Games. Unlike the latter, however, all can choose which factions join if they follow the rules and pass the tests. Divergent adds new layer of complexity with its creation of an illusion of democracy for participants in its fraction society, with the factions controlled by outside forces. The basic social structure in Divergent is that each faction fulfills a role in society. Those who cannot contribute to society are cast aside to become factionless and are deprived of access to an identity and resources. In a journal article, Andrea Burgos Mascarol compared the factionless to illegal immigrants who don't have access to certain public services either. Both are marginalized from society because they are unable to contribute to it. Some reviews criticize the lack of depth and realism of the social structures of the novel. Kirkus reviews called the social structures a preposterous premise. Booklist called the structure a simplistic, color-coded world that stretches credibility on occasion. In a review for the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater student newspaper, Royal Purple News, Abrielle Backhouse notes how the entire system seems insubstantial and asks rhetorically, how could it be possible for any individual with his or her infinite emotions and experiences to be condensed to one single quality to tolerate for the rest of their lives and to choose at the mere age of 16? In an interview, Roth described the social structure to have expanded from her initial conception, and she added candor to fill a gap in the reasoning between the world that needed to be filled. The social structure most affects the novel's themes by socially dividing different knowledge types that characters can access. In our book chapter exploring how literacy in different knowledge types affects the series, Alice Cree described the factions and the character indoctrination in those factions as deliberately creating knowledge gaps between initiates to different factions. Because of the initiation process, the characters become literate in knowledge that is valued by other factions. Triss's divergence allows her to be successful because she because she can become literate in a broad set of knowledges and information types, and so she becomes more admirable to the reader. Curry agrees that Janine's leadership in erudite represents an academic ivory tower that alienates other types of knowledge, and so the book critiques academic learning in favor of the broader knowledge as embodied by Triss. Curry compares the novel to Julie Bertagna's 2002 Exodus, describing both as using spaces and landscapes in which knowledge is learned to critique crumbling knowledge institutions, like academic spaces that dissemble knowledge instead of facilitating deeper holistic knowledge literacies that can create understanding. And now on to violence and fear. Like The Hunger Games, Divergent depicts considerable violence for a young adult novel. The Publishers Weekly review emphasized that stylistic choice, called it edgy, and described the initiation rituals that Triss endures as spellbinding, as they are violent, requiring sadistic tests of strength and courage. However, as Susan Dominus pointed out, the novel does not keep the violence at the forefront of reader experience. She read in the New York Times, terrible things happen to the people Triss loves, yet the characters absorb these events with disquieting ease. Here, somehow, the novel's flights from reality distance the reader from the emotional impact that might come in a more effective, realistic, or even fantasy novel. When describing her inspiration for the Dallas training their initiates by exposing them to their fears, Roth, in an interview with her website Pop Sugar, said that she was influenced by many sources, but the most important was her Psych 101, my first year of college, where I learned about exposure therapy, which is when they treat people with fear, like for anxiety. It exposes them repeatedly to what they're afraid of, and you gradually become less afraid of it, or have a healthy level of fear. And I thought of the Dallas then, because they're conditioning perfectly normal people to get over perfectly irrational fears. Daniel Cross's book list review of the novel described the intense psychological pressure as akin to joining the Marines, but also providing the built-in tension that makes the novel a compelling read. And finally, the theme of Christianity. Though the novel does not maintain an overly Christian thematic interest, some readers place the novel's themes within that context because of Roth's professed religiosity. In the postscript acknowledgments, Roth emphasized her Christian faith. Thank you, God, for your Son and for blessing me beyond comprehension. For some reviewers, this element of Roth's lifestyle is important to the novel's impact. For example, when reviewing the novel for the Christian Ministry Breakpoint, Sherry Early described Roth as a Christian, and the novel setting as post-feminist, maybe even Christian. She also said that though the novel is not overtly Christian, it follows a Christian point of view because it fights against the restrictions placed upon her by a controlling and totalitarian state, and because Triss must also explore the cracks and imperfections within her own psyche. Kate Hall also acknowledges that the novel would have a Christian message in reviewing it for the evangelical book review organization, the Gospel Coalition. However, Hoyle criticized the novel for using profane terminology, for never clarifying what the practices are supposed to mean. Reviewers outside the Christian community have also noticed the Christian context of the novel. In a review of the book and the first movie, David Edelstein observed the book's treatment of intellectuals as following a tendency in Christian culture to question genetic modification and the majority. The intellectual erudite faction are largely described as control-hungry villains pitted against the abnegation faction, which is depicted as righteous and merciful. He wrote, "The novelist, Veronica Roth, reserves her loathing for the erudites who spend their days in intellectual pursuit, and that the trend of intellectualism, thinking without feeling, makes people apt to seize power and impose Maoist-like uniformity on entire populations, on pain of death." So overall, that's the first book of the series. I think it's pretty darn good, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting things going on here, so yeah. So overall, I give Divergent, I'll give it 4 Dallas Fires out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in tomorrow's week to take a look at the next book in the series, Insurgent. So, I guess I'll see you all tomorrow then.